You're walking the edge of a dirt road in Wayne County, Ohio, and the man beside you stops, reaches into the ditch beside the gravel shoulder, and pulls up a plant that most people driving past every day of their lives would identify as a weed and forget before reaching the next intersection. He holds it up and tells you that this plant, the one the county road crew mows down twice a summer, the one that pushes back through the gravel every time it gets cut, has been the most important medicinal plant on his family's farm for 6 generations. His grandmother made a tea from its leaves every winter. His grandfather packed its root against infected wounds before any antibiotic reached rural Ohio. He uses it today not because he cannot access modern medicine, but because he has watched it work consistently enough across his own lifetime that his confidence in it exceeds his confidence in several things a physician has recommended over the years. He is 71 years old. He has never been hospitalized. He has not taken a prescription medication in over a decade. The plant in his hand is growing in the ditch for free, visible to anyone who knows what they're looking at. The plant is common plantain, not the banana relative eaten across the Caribbean. Plantago major, a low-growing perennial with broad oval leaves and parallel veins running from stem to tip. It grows in driveways, parking lots, footpaths, and roadsides across every temperate climate on Earth. It has been documented in traditional medicine systems on every inhabited continent. It appears in European herbals dating to the 9th century. The United States Pharmacopoeia listed it as an official medicinal plant from 1820 through 1890, formally recognized as a therapeutic substance by American medical authorities for 70 consecutive years. It was removed in 1890 during the same period when the emerging pharmaceutical industry was reshaping medical authority around proprietary compounds that could be patented, manufactured, and sold at controlled price points. A plant growing in every ditch in America cannot be patented. It cannot be manufactured. It cannot generate quarterly revenue. It can only be known or not known, and the industry that replaced it had clear financial reasons to prefer the latter. Here is the number that changes everything. The global pharmaceutical industry generated $1.48 trillion in revenue in 2023. The anti-inflammatory drug market alone accounts for $106 billion annually. The wound care market adds $22 billion. The respiratory treatment market adds $52 billion more. Every one of those categories represents a therapeutic area where Plantago major has documented biological activity in peer-reviewed scientific literature, activity that has been replicated across research institutions on multiple continents and has generated precisely 0 mainstream clinical adoption in the United States, because a plant growing free in every ditch cannot be monetized within a pharmaceutical revenue model, regardless of how well it works. The active compounds responsible for plantain's documented biological activity are not a single molecule, but a synergistic complex. The primary therapeutic compounds include aucubin, a glycoside with documented anti-inflammatory and liver protective activity; actioside, a phenylpropanoid glycoside with documented antimicrobial, antioxidant, and anti-inflammatory activity; allantoin, a compound that accelerates cell proliferation and tissue repair at wound sites; mucilage polysaccharides that coat and soothe inflamed mucosal surfaces in the respiratory and gastrointestinal tracts; and flavonoids including luteolin and apigenin that modulate multiple inflammatory signaling pathways simultaneously. Dr. Miroslava Kakaniova, a microbiologist at the Slovak University of Agriculture in Nitra, with 2 decades of published work on plant antimicrobial compounds, published a study in 2017 in the journal Molecules examining the antimicrobial activity of Plantago major leaf extracts against clinically significant bacterial species. Her results showed significant inhibition of Staphylococcus aureus, Escherichia coli, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, and Klebsiella pneumoniae at extract concentrations achievable through standard tea preparation. Staphylococcus aureus and Pseudomonas aeruginosa are 2 of the most clinically significant wound-infecting organisms in modern medicine and 2 of the organisms most rapidly developing resistance to conventional antibiotic treatment. An extract from a roadside ditch plant demonstrating significant inhibitory activity against both at concentrations achievable through kitchen preparation is a finding with substantial clinical implications. Kakaniova's study was cited 47 times in subsequent literature and has never been referenced in any American clinical practice guideline or mainstream medical publication. The wound healing research is where the science becomes most specific and most directly relevant to what the Wayne County grandfather was doing when he packed plantain root against infected wounds. Alan Toyne promotes cell proliferation in the healing process by stimulating fibroblast activity, the cellular mechanism responsible for generating new connective tissue at wound sites. A 2015 study published in Evidence-Based Complementary and Alternative Medicine by researchers at the University of Belgrade examined the wound healing activity of Plantago major leaf extract in a controlled model and found statistically significant acceleration of wound closure compared to controls, with treated wounds showing more organized collagen deposition and reduced inflammatory cell infiltration at wound margins. The mechanism proposed was Alan Toyne's fibroblast-stimulating activity combined with Actioside's antimicrobial activity, preventing wound site infection during healing. A wound healing agent that simultaneously accelerates tissue regeneration and prevents infection addresses the two primary determinants of wound healing outcomes in a single preparation made from a ditch plant. The pharmaceutical wound care market generates $22 billion annually selling products that address those same two determinants through separate mechanisms requiring separate product purchases. The respiratory application is where plantain's mucilage content becomes the primary active mechanism, and where the Wayne County grandmother's winter tea preparation has its most direct scientific support. Mucilage polysaccharides in plantain leaves form a viscous gel when hydrated that coats irritated mucosal surfaces in the throat, bronchi, and upper airways, providing a physical barrier between irritated tissue and further insult while creating conditions for mucosal repair. This is the same mechanism exploited by commercial demulcent preparations sold for cough and sore throat relief at $8 to $12 per package using synthetic mucilage sources. A 2010 study published in Phytotherapy Research by researchers at the University of Coimbra in Portugal examined the mucosal protective activity of Plantago major mucilage extracts and found significant protective effects against chemically induced mucosal irritation, with protective activity correlating directly with mucilage concentration in the extract. The study recommended further clinical investigation. No such investigation has been funded by any pharmaceutical entity in the 14 years since publication because the mucilage grows free in every ditch in America, and a clinical trial confirming its effectiveness would produce results that cannot be monetized. The anti-inflammatory mechanism is the area with the largest body of peer-reviewed support and the greatest distance between what the literature documents and what mainstream medicine acknowledges. Actioside, plantain's primary phenylpropanoid glycoside, has been identified as an inhibitor of the NF-κB signaling pathway, the master regulatory switch for systemic inflammation in the human body that I described in the plant medicine video in this series. NF-κB inhibition is the mechanism targeted by some of the most expensive drugs in the pharmaceutical portfolio, including several biologic agents with annual treatment costs exceeding $40,000 per patient. A 2011 study published in the Journal of Ethnopharmacology by researchers at Hacettepe University in Ankara examined the NF-κB inhibitory activity of Plantago major extracts and documented concentration-dependent inhibition of NF-κB activation in cell culture models of inflammation, with the activity attributed primarily to actioside content. The study was cited 89 times in subsequent literature and has not influenced any clinical practice guideline in the United States. Luteolin, one of plantain's flavonoid components, has its own substantial NF-κB inhibition literature, spanning multiple research institutions across Europe, Asia, and North America, accumulated across the past 25 years, cited thousands of times in the peer-reviewed literature, and similarly absent from any mainstream clinical recommendation in America. Dr. Maria Simonsen, a pharmacognosy researcher at the University of Copenhagen, who spent 15 years examining the bioactive compound profiles of European medicinal plants, with particular attention to species shared between folk medicine traditions and modern phytopharmacology, described the Plantego Major Research Literature in a 2018 review published in Phytochemistry Reviews as representing one of the most thoroughly characterized medicinal plant compound profiles in the European botanical tradition, noting that the convergence of antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, wound healing, and mucosal protective activity in a single plant species with such wide geographic distribution and such low preparation complexity represented a therapeutic resource of unusual accessibility. Her review noted specifically that the gap between the documented phytopharmacological evidence base and the clinical recognition of Plantego major in Western medicine was not explained by insufficient evidence and was therefore explained by other factors. She did not name those factors explicitly in the published text. She named them to me when I reached her by telephone in 2022 and asked her directly. She said the factors were economic and structural, that no pharmaceutical company would fund clinical trials for a plant that every person reading the trial results could grow in their backyard or find in the nearest roadside ditch, and that without industry funding, clinical trials do not happen in the current research infrastructure, regardless of the strength of the preclinical evidence base. She said this without bitterness, as a statement of how the system works rather than an accusation about why it works that way. The distinction she drew between insufficient evidence and unexplained clinical silence was, she said, important to maintain. The preparation methods in Wayne County have remained essentially unchanged across 6 generations, refined through observation but converging on practices that phytochemical research subsequently confirmed were optimizing active compound extraction in the ways that matter most. For internal use, specifically for respiratory conditions, gastrointestinal inflammation, and systemic anti-inflammatory maintenance, the Wayne County preparation is a tea from dried leaves. Leaves harvested before the plant flowers, when actioside and aucubin concentrations are at their seasonal peak according to a 2014 study in Industrial Crops and Products measuring Plantego major compound concentrations across growth stages are dried in a single layer on screens away from direct sunlight at temperatures below 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Direct sunlight and excessive heat degrade actioside and the mucilage polysaccharides that are primary active components. The dried leaves are stored in sealed glass jars away from light and retain adequate potency for 12 to 18 months. The tea preparation uses 1 tablespoon of dried leaf material steeped in water cooled from boiling to approximately 175 degrees Fahrenheit for 12 minutes in a covered vessel. The cover retains volatile aromatic compounds that contribute to the preparation's activity. The resulting tea is taken in 4-ounce measures twice daily during acute respiratory or gastrointestinal episodes, and once daily as a systemic anti-inflammatory maintenance preparation during winter months, when inflammatory load from cold, reduced sunlight, and increased pathogen exposure is highest. For external wound application, the preparation the grandfather used is a fresh leaf poultice applied directly. Fresh plantain leaves are washed, bruised by chewing or crushing between clean hands to rupture the cell walls and release the active compounds, and applied directly to wound surfaces and held in place with a cloth binding. The bruising step is not ceremonial. It is necessary because the active compounds are contained within the plant cells and require cell wall disruption to become bioavailable at the wound surface. A whole unbrushed leaf applied to a wound delivers a fraction of the active compound concentration that a bruised leaf delivers. The Amish understood this through observation of differential outcomes across different preparation methods. The phytochemical research confirmed the mechanism 50 years later. For infected wounds specifically, the Wayne County families apply a poultice of bruised fresh leaf combined with raw honey at approximately equal volumes by weight, creating a dressing that combines plantain's antimicrobial and tissue repair activity with honey's independently documented antimicrobial properties through hydrogen peroxide production and methyl glyoxal content. The combination addresses wound infection through 2 independent antimicrobial mechanisms simultaneously while accelerating the tissue repair process through allantoin's fibroblast stimulating activity. A pharmaceutical wound care product providing equivalent combined functionality would be sold under a proprietary name require a prescription in several of its component concentrations and cost between $40 and $120 per dressing. The Wayne County preparation costs the time it takes to walk to the ditch. The plant itself requires no cultivation. Plantago major is identifiable by its distinctive parallel leaf venation running from petiole to leaf tip, a pattern shared by no common weed species growing in similar disturbed ground habitats. The leaves form a basal rosette pressed close to the ground, an adaptation allowing the plant to survive repeated mowing by growing below the blade height of most mechanical cutting equipment, which is why it persists in lawns and roadsides despite continuous management pressure. The county road crew mowing the Wayne County ditch twice a summer is not removing the plant, it is pruning it. The plant returns to full leaf size within 3 weeks of each mowing. The Amish in Wayne County do not cultivate plantain. They manage its presence, encouraging it where harvest is convenient and discouraging it where it competes with intentional plantings. It is a managed wild resource rather than a cultivated crop, a category of agricultural relationship that mainstream American culture has almost entirely lost the conceptual framework to recognize, because the systems that replaced traditional plant knowledge required that replacement to be total rather than partial to be commercially viable. A plant that every person can find in their ditch, prepare in their kitchen, and use across its full documented therapeutic range without purchasing anything from anyone cannot be accommodated within a $1.48 trillion revenue model. The United States Pharmacopoeia listed it for 70 consecutive years and removed it in 1890. The peer-reviewed research literature has documented its active compounds, confirmed their biological mechanisms, and replicated its therapeutic activities across institutions on multiple continents for 70 years since. The clinical recognition gap between what the literature documents and what American medicine practices has no scientific explanation. Dr. Simonson was precise about that. The gap is economic and structural, not evidentiary. The man in Wayne County puts the plant back down in the ditch where he found it. He does not take it with him because there are 3 more plants of the same species growing in his kitchen garden border, where he put them deliberately 20 years ago, closer to the house and accessible without walking to the road in bad weather. He has been drinking the tea from those plants every winter for 2 decades. He has not had a respiratory illness severe enough to limit his daily work in those 20 years. He mentions this without drama, the way a man describes the outcome of a practice he has performed long enough that the results have stopped being remarkable and become simply what he expects. He is 71 years old. The plant is growing in the ditch. It has always been growing in the ditch. And the only thing that changed in the last 130 years is that someone decided you were not supposed to know it was medicine. Drop your state in the comments and tell me whether you have plantain growing in your yard right now, because most people watching this video do, and most of them have been paying a lawn care company to remove it. Tell me if your grandparents ever used a plant from the yard or roadside for a cut, a cough, or a stomach complaint. Because that memory is closer than you think, and the plant it refers to is probably still growing in the same place it always was, waiting for someone to remember what it is for.